business card. Waiting. For
Good evening, everyone. Happy Tax Day. Call to order this meeting of the Carrboro Town Council on April 18th, 2023. And I think I'll just mention by way of agenda adjustments that we have had a couple of requests for adjustments to the agenda regarding the consent agenda. So we have the first two items on the consent agenda that I will just recommend that we move down to other matters. Is that okay with everybody? And then these are the ones that Susan wrote about. And we'll go from there.
So becomes discussion.
Right. I think there are a couple of questions that we need to have answered. Okay, so we'll start as we usually do by welcoming our poet laureate, Liza Wolfe Francis, to get us going.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Happy Poetry Month still. Bienvenidos a nuestros visitantes. Okay, I have a poem for the Earth since we're coming up on Earth Day on Saturday. It's called Earth Stories. Many tales tell how I was not birthed from Mother Earth, but I did come from her. Every day I shed dust that is her desert, her forest loam, her islands, her mountains, and I settle into my own animal self. Amid our collective noise so loud I had forgotten her. It was hard to hear her speak. Sometimes I moved fast over her, unaware even of my own self. When I slow down, I am grateful for her silence. For trees she births, scent of water over dry land, chatter of a house finch, cawing of crows, each single spine on a cactus and the point each one comes to against the sky. I am grateful also for me, for my own body and self in this living shell, this moving home. I too am one of her creations. My thoughts, poetic and not, gnaw relentlessly at my acorn brain. Her oxygen flows into the caverns of my being. Here, this ground with rocks rolled in dust, this land, dirt of my flesh. My skin and body are of dirt, are of this earth shaped into form. I had forgotten this, but remembered when I saw a mountain silhouette at sunset, a fawn in the forest, a robin at dawn. I heard a river pass by me, and I began to relearn to fall in love. There is nothing like the scent of rain on the earth, nothing like the green bodies that reach for sun, nothing like the creatures that roam these landscapes. I would never not want to call that love. Thank you.
Liza.
Thank you. And there are some poetry events coming up tomorrow evening. I'll just say really quick, at the Eno Arts Mill in Hillsboro, there is a poetry slam put on by Dasan Ahanu, and that will be at 7 o'clock. And then on Saturday for Earth Day, we're giving out seedlings. Oh, yes. Do you have a question?
Oh, the mayor got the record.
Do you have a question, Barbara? Go ahead.
Oh, I just have one more thing. So at the farmer's market, we'll be giving out seedlings they'll be giving out seedlings to children, and they're free. And we will ask the children for like a line about the seeds, and we will compose, the Poets Council will work on composing like some community poems from that. And then at 2 o'clock, they'll be writing in Martin Luther King Park, and that's 2 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock we'll be reading of eco poems or nature poems to honor Earth Day. So please join us. That would be wonderful. Okay. Yes.
Barbara.
And thank you. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Earth Stories by, you wrote that?
That's my poem. Yeah.
You better go ahead. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Randy?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Wesley, the clerk, if the poems can be put up. I noticed, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, that Liza's poem was not up yet, and especially with Earth Day coming up, I think it would be wonderful. And I'd love if we could have a reading at the Earth Day event at Town Commons as well. But it's a beautiful, perfect poem for Earth Day, so thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, we do have a resolution this evening, but I think we're waiting on one more special guest to join us. So I'm going to ask the council's patience to move ahead with the agenda until that guest arrives, and then we'll come back to the resolution. So we'll go on now, Mr. Clerk, to the announcement of upcoming meetings.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Get a few meeting updates here. April 19th, we have the Board of Adjustment meeting at 7 p.m. here in the council room. Also, April 19th, the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission at 7 p.m., also here at Town Hall. On April 20th, the Climate Action Team meeting will meet at 7 p.m., and that is virtual. April 20th, we have the joint public hearing with the Town Council of Carrboro, Chapel Hill, and Orange County. This is the joint planning public hearing, and that's going to be held at 7 p.m., and that is at the Whitted Building in Hillsboro. That's 300 West Tryon Street. And I believe we have a quorum. I've heard from 4, so we just need 4 to attend. So
if you're one of the 4 who told Wesley you would attend the public hearing on Thursday, please actually do attend the public hearing on Thursday, because we do need a quorum of each of the boards to be there. Randy?
Because the CAT meets that night and we have Earth Day on Saturday, I probably won't be able to be in two places, so.
Who are the 4 who've said they can definitely be there Thursday? So Eleazar, myself, Susan,
I think I was.
and Danny,
Okay.
and maybe Randy. But okay, so we do definitely need the 4 of us there.
All right.
It's now been said publicly. It's on the record.
In the minutes?
yes,
These 4
yes.
members of the board will be at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wesley.
I have a few more. Also, April 20th, we have a Transportation Advisory Board meeting at 7:30 p.m., and that's going to be virtual via Zoom. Next week, Community Safety Task Force on April 24th at 6 p.m., and that will be held at the Interfaith Council at 110 West Main Street. And then next Tuesday, April 25th, the next Town Council meeting at 7 p.m. here at Town Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'll just add that tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock is the monthly meeting of the Orange County Visitors Bureau Board of Directors. And then the following morning on Thursday, the 20th at 8:30 is the monthly meeting of the Chamber Board of Directors. Are there any other meetings or events coming up? Randy?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge that today, April 18th, is Yom HaShoah, which marks the Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's a day that is in commemoration of the 6 million Jews and other peoples, 5 million other peoples who perished in the Holocaust. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to remember.
Susan?
I just wanted to give a few more details for the Earth Day celebration, where Liza hopefully will read her poem again. But that will be this Saturday, 3:30 to 6, I believe, on Town Commons. Hope to see you all there.
Yes, and so there's lots of different events. There are 26 tablers, and in addition to that, food vendors and the E3 camp, our own Carrboro E3 camp with a science lab. So come on out.
Eleazar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that the Faith ID, which is a community ID program sponsored by El Centro Hispano, as well as a couple of other organizations, will be held in Carrboro this Saturday, the 22nd, starting at 8 a.m. At the Carrboro Century Center. So invite folks to come out and get their community ID.
Eleazar, can you say a little bit more so folks know what the Faith Idea is and why it's important?
Yes, so the Faith ID is a program that began as an initiative between institution of faith and nonprofits and local law enforcement to provide a form of identification for those who don't have the ability to get a driver's license or a passport or some of these other federal and state-wide identifications. This doesn't serve in the place of those when it comes to travel or when it comes to driving, but they do give folks an opportunity to identify themselves to local law enforcement, to the schools, to different other programs where identification is needed, such as also getting a bank account. So this is a great way to build community and relationships between local law enforcement, nonprofit the institutions of faith and community members.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other meetings coming up? I don't see any. We'll move on next to public comment. This is comments from the public on items that are not on our agenda tonight. I have 2 people signed up, so I'm just going to go in the order that I have them listed here, and we'll just remind folks that we ask speakers to keep their comments to about 3 minutes. I'll have a timer set, and then it'll make an annoying noise, and I'll start waving my hand at you, and then it'll stop. So we're going to start with the first person on the list, and that is Chris Young. Come on up. Great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Young, and I'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak tonight. I live at 119 Fidelity Street, apartment D3, and today I want to talk about Fidelity Park, or the Westwood Cemetery expansion issue coming up. So I am with the Village Square Homeowners Association, and I would like to point out that Carrboro has 4 large parks that are on a more affluent side of the town, and these parks are far from the low-income multifamily homes on, I can't point to it, but Fidelity, Davie, and Highway 54, and very far away from those below Highway 54. And I have a clip here of a family that
Park.
yeah, thank you. They live approximately here on Hillmont. So I would like to point out to the council that the decision to expand the cemetery is in fact permanent, and I would like to highlight the opportunity cost lost if we choose to expand the cemetery. And I would like to point out that a park will in 10 years be able to be torn down, but a cemetery will be a permanent decision and will improve the quality of life of the surrounding community and housing. So I understand that there is an upcoming work session, and I would like to ask the council to please give fair treatment to the pro-park side in the staff report, adhere to the Carrboro Comprehensive Plan that I understand was drawn up in 2020 to provide equitable access to natural spaces, and to please allow or encourage a community discussion on the use of the land. And since I'm new, I'm not sure how much discussion has already been had, but I understand that there is quite a lot. Lastly, I'd like to highlight a few benefits to a park that I think would be particularly useful to the area. As laid out in the comprehensive plan for Carrboro for the next 10 to 15 years, equitable access to green space for low-income multifamily developments, and then to prevent further heat pollution in downtown Carrboro and promote sustainable land development. And I understand that that space, if you've driven past it, or has a Google Fiber building that has been there for a while, and so the land can be allocated for other uses other than the cemetery, and rezoned for presumably something sustainable and green. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Next on the list is Drew Kelly. Come on up. Welcome.
Yeah, I tried timing myself for the 3 minutes. It's really tough. So there'll probably be some things I'll email instead of just saying here tonight. Hi, my name is Drew Kelly. I live at 103 Hanford Road in Carrboro. And I've been following the town council discussions regarding the Bowling Creek development, and just wanted to share a few thoughts after reviewing the comprehensive plan and just some of the recent discussions. I think for me, it's exceptionally important how the community is engaged, how that process goes, and when we're asked to provide that feedback, just how that's framed to the community. I think the framing of it will have a huge impact on what feedback you get. I think the results in terms of, if they're biased one way or another, and also just how aligned it is with the community values. So I just would ask that as you guys engage in this process, over the next few months, that just is taken into consideration. And with that in mind, I just, personally thinking about it, there's a sort of a holistic set of options that I've thought through, and again, you all may have thought through these too, but just would ask that they be considered. And option one would be maintain the existing trail. I think for a lot of us, we use it today for recreation, we use it for commuting, and I think we enjoy the refuge from paved streets and other more busy areas of the town. So another option would be solutions that perhaps balance the interests of, maintaining the environmental benefits of the forest with an understanding that we may want to make improvements to certain sections of that path. And then finally, I just would ask that the council revisit the rails to trails and some other alternative solutions. And I think the reason for that is just looking at the 2009 plan, it looked like there were a lot of things unanswered or unresolved in that, and that relates to permits, it relates to land disputes, engineering challenges that might be there. And I think it would be useful for the town if we review these different comparables just to see how that would match up, because it seems like there still would be a number of years before we might resolve some of those issues. And so just would ask that the town consider that. It's a long-term investment. I know there may potentially be significant costs around it, so I just think it's useful information for the town to review. And so I think just in closing, my request is just to revisit that decision on scope and what gets included in the scope and what gets presented to the community as an option. And then also just to think through maybe some of the dates. I know that there's a date of October, and I certainly think there should be a date. You guys should set a date and sort of set a line in the sand. But I think as you're going through some of these discussions, it would be helpful that as you start getting some more detail around the process and what all is involved with engaging the community, structuring that feedback process, and then ultimately summarizing that result, just to come up with a more reasonable date, or a date that aligns with those activities. So anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, and great job on the timing. Appreciate you taking the time to come out tonight. Okay, I believe our guests are all here today. So, council members, we have a resolution that, as you know, has been brought forward by LESR. And so I'm going to turn that over to him and ask him to introduce our guests and introduce the resolution.
Good evening, council members and community. As you know, council members, I sent this resolution over, and I just want to give a little background before I bring up some of our special guests. First, I wanted to say we know Carrboro has been an inclusive community for many years. I've had the honor of standing in this podium before and after being elected, pushing resolutions like these and asking for support from council members and community, and we've all received it. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been a part of our community and has been a big part of what makes Carrboro a beautiful place for immigrants to live. So as you know, we do have a resolution, but I wanted to ask the council's permission to have our guests come up and have one of our guests read the resolution. That cool? Awesome. So I want to invite up first Wendy Tenorio, who is a member of the Alianza Américas, la Asociación de Alianza Américas. I also want to bring up Eleazar Cifuentes, president of la Asociación de Guatemaltecos, and the Honorable Consul General Jorge Archila of Guatemala. So we're going to have our friend Wendy read the resolution.
Great.
Thank you. Good evening. And I will say my name is Wendy Tenorio, member of the Guatemala Association too. So they say that a resolution supporting extension for the temporary protected status program for Guatemala. The town of Carrboro has long shown support for its immigrants communities, including many immigrants for Central America, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security may grant temporary protected status, including employment authorization and protection for deportation, to immigrants in the United States who are unable to return safely to their homes, counties, because of violence, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions. And on November 18, 2014, the Town Council approved a resolution declaring Carrboro to be a welcoming community for minors seeking refuge for violence in their homes countries, and urging the federal government to ensure that those seeking safety in the United States receive due process and legal presentation. And on November 4, 2017, the Mayor Lydia Lavelle joined a coalition of 32 mayors from across the United States, calling on the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Secretary of State to extend the temporary protected status program, noting that deportation and beneficiaries will separate families and bring instability to our communities. And on November 14, 2017, the Town Council approved a resolution supporting the expansion of the temporary protected status program and urged the Department of Homeland Security to renew the program for Nicaragua. And of November 10, 2022, nations with temporary protected status designations nations include Afghanistan, Burma, Cameroon, El Salvador, Ethiopia, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, Venezuela, and Yemen. And North Carolina is estimated to be home of the 9th largest population of temporary protected status holders in the United States. And a study conducted by Carolina Demography found that over 25,000 Guatemala lives in North Carolina. And those families are an integral part of the community who will be welcomed and supported. Should protect vulnerable persons who seek safety in our communities. Now, therefore, and it is resolved that in Carrboro Town Council renew its support for the temporary protected status program and urge the Department of Homeland Security to design Guatemala as a temporary protected status country. Be it further resolved that the Town Council asks the Town Clerk to send a copy of this resolution to Congresswoman Valerie Fauci. This is the 18th day of April 2023. Thank you.
It's a good day. Thank you so much for reading that, and thank you to our guests for being here. Councilmember, do you want to introduce the resolution, move the resolution?
Yes. So, colleagues, I move the approval of this resolution.
For a second?
Second.
Seconded by, moved by Eleazar, seconded by Randy, that we approve the resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. I believe that Eleazar has invited our guests to take a photograph with the council. Is that?
Yes, if we could, we would like to hear a couple of comments from both of our guests and then take a photo. Yes, sir.
I say thank you so much for the resolution. That helped a lot because I got a lot of Guatemala people over here in North Carolina or in United States, and that helped a lot. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jorge Archila. I'm the Consul General of Guatemala for North and South Carolina. Honorable Mayor Sales, Honorable Town of Carrboro, City Council, Town Council. I want to thank you in the name of all the Guatemalans who live in North Carolina. I know the demographer has one number. We know from the people that we serve at the consulate, we are over 80,000 in North Carolina alone. So this means a lot to have the support and the trust of the town of Carrboro here. It is definitely a big sign, a big welcoming invitation for all Guatemalans here in North Carolina to that we are part of this community. We are contributing members of each and every city in North Carolina and throughout the United States, and it's very appreciated to finally be recognized by the town council. So thank you very much.
Council General, I'll just say it's a real honor to have you here with us tonight. We don't often get visitors like you with us in our council meetings, and it's a real pleasure and honor. So thank you for coming. Do you want to tell us what to do now, and we'll follow directions? Maybe in front of the.
Now you should look at that camera, and then we'll do that one, and then we'll do this one.
Chapines.
Uno más.
Keep it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Hasta luego. Gracias por venir.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It's good to see you. Of course.
For coming.
Thanks for coming. Uh-oh, another picture.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah, thank you, Eleazar. Thanks, everyone. Mr. Manager, before we move on, I just want to take a moment to commend all of the town staff who this weekend were responsible for making a really successful open streets event. That there was a threat of rain, which I think kept some people away early on, but quickly it became very, very crowded and popular, and it was great to see so many people out. So thank you to you and your staff for that.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll move on to the consent agenda, Mr. Manager. I guess we really only have one item on that now.
Yes, the appointments to the Appearance Commission. And the purpose of the agenda item is for Town Council to consider appointments to the Commission, Appearance Commission.
For a motion to approve the consent agenda,
So moved.
Second.
I'll say, let's say Eleazar and then Barbara. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes unanimously. All right, we're going to move on now, Mr. Manager, to our public hearing.
Okay. Public hearing on renewal of annexation boundary agreement for the town of Carrboro and Chapel Hill. The purpose of the agenda item is for the Town Council to hold a public hearing on renewal of the annexation boundary agreement between the towns of Carrboro and Chapel Hill. And our Planning Director, Trish McGuire, has a brief overview.
So as Trish comes up, I will call this public hearing to order, and just note that for those who are curious why we would have to have a public hearing for something that seems like a pretty, straightforward update to an existing agreement, it is because apparently if you have an annexation boundary agreement between two cities, the statute says you have to have a public hearing about it. And so that's what we're going to do. And glad to see you, Trish. And we'll hear from any members of the public who are here to speak as well.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Good evening, everyone.
The towns of Carrboro and Chapel Hill established an annexation boundary agreement in 1995, and that was following several years of discussion of a task force between the two towns, and following the development of the joint planning agreement between the towns and Orange County dealing with the southern part of our jurisdiction. It established the jurisdictional boundaries we see on our zoning map, and our jurisdiction, for everyone in the room for ease, it's the sort of center portion, the most colorful part of that map is our jurisdiction. So it covers a couple of different parts to it, but it includes the rural buffer on that map too, and the town of Chapel Hill in various shades of blue. And in any case, this agreement was established at that time per the general statutes provision that allows local governments to do this, to enable them to plan, to convey to future and present property owners where annexation will and will not occur in the future. There was an associated agreement regarding entranceways, specifically the Smith Level Road entranceway and the relationship to the University Lake watershed boundary that was adopted at that time, and the annexation boundary agreement and the resolution have lapsed, and it's time for us to consider renewing them. The agreement basically has a couple of different parts, as I've sort of mentioned already. The agreement itself, maps that illustrate the agreement, and the critical part of the agreement really is this line that runs up between our two jurisdictions that's defined within the agreement itself. And then that resolution I was mentioning, principles for protection of entranceways. Specifically, what is in this boundary agreement? There is this definition of the boundary, and then a provision that says the town of Chapel Hill cannot annex west of the boundary, so annex into the area that is basically defined as the areas that Carrboro will annex. There's another provision that specifically says the town of Carrboro is not going to annex to the east of the line. It also indicates that we have agreed at the time in 1995, the town of Carrboro actually had our jurisdictional boundary was slightly different. Our ETJ boundary ran on the east side of Smith Level Road for about 250 feet. So we had a little jog that went all the way down to Star Point. And so as part of this work, the two towns agreed to pull that line over to Smith Level Road and create a clearer boundary, easier boundary to manage along Smith Level Road. There are also provisions that are in the agreement about notification, time of withdrawal, how we might modify it, and so forth. We have updated the map slightly to this color version that's shown here, just to make it clearer and to match that in the time that's passed since the agreement was first put in place, annexations have changed in the two towns. The town hadn't yet annexed this northern portion of our jurisdiction up here at that time, and Chapel Hill's what's labeled as ETJ up here was then part of the joint planning area, so transition area for the town of Chapel Hill. Some other little changes too as well, so we've updated the map. The agreement also includes this map that shows our other jurisdictional boundaries in southern Orange County, and we're updating this map as well just for the same purposes, to make sure we understand what the rural buffer looks like and how this agreement intersects with the joint planning agreement. The resolution establishing principles of protection for entranceways was an attachment to the agreement when it was adopted in 1995, and there are two pieces of this essentially. Both towns committed to adopting plans and ordinances that protect the character of Smith Level Road as an entranceway and the views and vistas that are related to its conditions, and it primarily being an area that is protected watershed, so with limited development opportunity, and that those actions would be taken without the towns requiring the approval of the other entity. They also both agreed, the two towns agreed, that there was an interest in a two-lane road from Rockhaven Road down to Star Point to help support this entranceway function for the community. That was a factor when the NCDOT project went forward several years ago that resulted in the town being able to get bike lanes and sidewalks on Smith Level Road as opposed to some other larger improvements with the roadway. We have in your packet an ordinance to authorize the execution of this agreement, the annexation boundary agreement, as well as a resolution pertaining to the entranceway principles, which are recommended for your action.
Thanks very much, Trish.
Sure.
Council members, I don't have anyone from the public signed up to speak as part of this public hearing, but I'll maybe open up just to make sure anybody really has a chance if they're interested. Okay, not seeing anyone. In that case, I'm going to first close the public hearing, and then I'll call on council members to ask any questions they might have. I saw a hand from Randy and Sammy. Randy?
Yeah, Tricia, I just wanted to know if the neighbors who live on the eastern side of Smith Level Road in that section, down along to Heritage Hills, if they were notified or if they needed to be notified.
Since we are not making, there was a notification, mailed notification in 1995 of the change to the ETJ, et cetera, but there hasn't been any notification. We've done an advertisement in the paper. We've done a published notice.
That's the public notice.
For this, yeah.
Thank you. I'll move the item.
So before I go to you, Sammy, I'll just ask for a second. So that's seconded by Susan. Is that for both attachments, Randy?
Yes.
So we'll
Attachment A and B.
continue our discussion with that. It's been moved by Randy, seconded by Susan. Sammy, you're next.
Trish, if you could show the map showing the map you had showing the borough buffer.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I know Mebane has a portion of the city in Orange County, and looking at this map, it's clear like Carrboro, we have nowhere to go except up, and except for that little tiny connection that touches Chatham County. And I was curious to understand what it takes to annex in another county, as apparently Mebane does. Does that require an agreement with Chatham County like we have here, or is it just?
No, it doesn't require an agreement.
But we could annex in Chatham County if there's.
Well, it's very difficult to do annexations involuntarily, so I would say
if
that
someone were to request it, since the legislator took that power away from us some years ago.
We don't require an agreement, but there are. We have to look at the statutes and see what exactly is what exactly would be the nature of the petition or request.
Okay, not that I think anyone is planning to do that. I'm just curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Any other questions for Trish on this item? Okay. It's been moved by Randy, seconded by Susan, that we adopt both attachments A and B, the ordinance and the agreement regarding entranceways. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes unanimously. Thank you, Trish.
You bet. Thank you.
Manager? Okay.
The first item on the other matters is a presentation from the Appearance Commission, and we have two speakers tonight.
I'll take this. First, I want to thank the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, town manager, on behalf of the Appearance Commission. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is David Markowitz, and I live at 403A South Greensboro Street, where I've lived for 15 years. My personal investment in our town is $8,884, which I pay annually through my property taxes. This goal this evening is I want to challenge each of you to look at our town differently. I want you to think about folks that use strollers, that use wheelchairs, that struggle with their eyesight, that struggle with walkers, And think about those folks and recognize through these pictures that I'm going to show you is that our town does not make it easy for those folks to navigate. I also want you to think about litter. I want you to think about cigarette butts. I want you to think about natural debris that's all around us. And ask yourself, where does it end up when it goes down a storm sewer? It ends up in our rivers. It ends up in our streams. I also want you to think about municipal and personal responsibility. We each have a responsibility. And we've gotten, as a town and as individuals, we've gotten complacent at the way in which we present ourselves in the community that we love. I also want you to think about visitors and how they look at our town. I will say one word, and that is scruffy, dirty, unkept. We can do better. Now I'm going to share some photos from throughout the state of North Carolina of other towns of our size. And it's going to be very quick. Do I have a little thing? How do I click through these? I click this? That arrow. Okay. So I want you to look at things differently. This is Pittsburgh. Take a look at it. Very crisp, very good signage, inviting people to shop and relax. This is another town. This is Pittsburgh as well. This is Boone. I want you to notice the flowers. I want you to notice the lamps, the lighting. I want you to look down the street and see the clarity, how clean it looks. This is Hillsborough. Town map tells you where to go. I want you to look at events posted clearly. What brings people into the town? I want you to look at that crosswalk. Clean, very distinguished. People know how to stay in those lines. This is street in Hillsborough. Take a look at the tables. Take a look at the chairs. Take a look at the landscape, the streetscape. Very neat, very tidy, very able to be negotiated by people. Another picture of it. This is Hickory. Hickory, North Carolina was just voted the top 5 in the country with regard to affordability and appearance. It's another picture. This is their Weaver Street. This is how it looks down there. This is Blowing Rock, inviting to a historic tour that they're going to start to show people what that community has to offer, the history of it. This is also in Blowing Rock. This is pet waste. This is where pet waste goes in Blowing Rock. This is New Bern. Take a look at the sidewalk. Again, large, able to go down there. People are able to access it in wheelchairs, in strollers, in folks that have trouble with vision. This is the beer study that just moved over in Chapel Hill. The beer study said, look, we want to create an environment that's inviting. They hired these 2 young ladies to basically create streetscape over there on their own dime. This is another example of planners. This is the parking lot that you all talked about recently that's shared by Carrboro and Chapel Hill. It's taken care of by a gentleman named Stephen. Stephen works for Chapel Hill, and he says, I take pride in the way this looks. This is our pride and joy in Carrboro. This is Weaver Street. They put a lot of investment to make this part of the community that it needs to be. This is a sidewalk next to Weaver Street. Southern States, beautiful. This is in front of Luna. They've taken upon themselves to make it look better. This is over here at Mercado. From this point all the way down to Weaver Street, there's one trash can. One trash can in the parking lot. This is 401. They put a ton of money into this to make this inviting. This is over here, glass half full, the parking lot over there. Now this, see this? Tree City. Okay, we're proud of being a tree city. This is what we did. We had 4 planters, and what was done was they were bricked over. It took us 2 months. You can see here, again, took us 2 months, and this is a proud Public Works employee who I spoke with the day he planted this tree. He says, I cannot wait to see that tree grow and know I planted it. But it took us 4 months to make this happen. This is what it looks like. We planted that tree. It was planted, the one in the back, in January. 3 months later, this is what's next to it. We can do better than this. We really can. This is another example. Look at the weeds. Look at the mold all the way down a primary street. The Appearance Commission is responsible to bring this to your attention. This is a Century Center. This is the lifeblood of our community. This is the fountain. Take a peek. It's dirty. Look at this. Is it inviting? Does it bring people to the community? Is this something we point to our visitors and say, this is us? We are better than this. This is the pizza place. I cannot remember it. Great pizza. They're doing their part. But look what's right 20 feet away from that. This graffiti that I've been looking at for 6 years. This is the police station with this trash, with this debris. This is a sewer. This is the storm sewer that sits in front of a $40 million library. Where does that water go? It goes down Pittsboro when it can't go down this, and it goes to the most vulnerable community we have, the trailer park at the end of Old Pittsboro. That's where that water goes. This is my dog. But more importantly, this is a sidewalk that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. How do you take a wheelchair down there? How do you do it? We have an incredible knack here in Carrboro that we put benches next to trash cans. And where do my dog, when he poops, where do I take that bag? I put it right there, right next to where someone sits. It's not right. There's not one pet waste container in this entire town. Not one. All we use is trash cans. This is a sidewalk. We pride ourselves on expanding the width of our sidewalks. This is our sidewalk that gets smaller and smaller as we try to get others to be bigger. This is a ramp that wheelchair access goes up, that blind people use to determine that, oh, there is a spot. We can do better. This is a storm sewer across from the Century Center. Come on. We got to open our eyes and look at it. This I've watched. It started with 1 brick. It's now that many bricks. It took 6 months for those bricks to wait, and I'm sitting there waiting for someone to fix it. This is in front of our, again, $40 million library. This is where someone gets to sit and wait for a bus, and that's the trash can that I put my dog waste in. It's not right. This is Armadillo Grill. That's the way that someone parks, gets in their wheelchair, gets in their stroller, gets in their walker, and tries to walk down that. How do they do it? They don't. This is Neil's Deli. Why do I put this here? I put this here because of personal responsibility. I take care of this. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I take care of it because Sheila needed help. And I said, I will make it look better. That's what we need to do, is make this place look better. Now, we worked with Hillsborough, and they said, look, here's what you want to do. Plant more trees. You've got to plant more trees in this community. Edge sidewalks and finish the repairs. Remove all downtown litter. Strategically place high-quality benches. Increase the number of trash, recycle, and let's at least get one pet waste dispenser that we can put stuff in. We need to leverage department goals. We all have more to do. You all work very hard at the town. We've got to coalesce and get around this. We also need to enact standards that allow people, businesses, to complement the amenities that we have in the town itself. And last, we have to treat, Danny, I saw you walk in with that briefcase. That was your grandfather's briefcase, if I heard you say. It's precious to you. You take care of it. That's our town personified. We need to take care of it and be conscious of it. Here's what we're asking. The Appearance Commission formally asks that at the next town budget cycle include a minimum of $30,000, a minimum, in the business district for streetscape improvements. To assist the AC, we prepared this prioritized list. And we asked for something of which, we're looking for this. Some of it can be done now at no cost. Lastly, I want to introduce Jim Porto. Now, Jim, Marine vet, former mayor. He's been around. He's seen this community grow. He's got a couple comments, and then we'll open up for questions. Jim?
Welcome, Jim. Good to see you again.
I don't know if I can top that. I'm Jim Porto, 107 Waters Road. I want to thank David. I want to thank his effort and his passion about this. I totally agree. I used to be a chair of the Appearance Commission many years ago, and this is something near and dear. And I think it's not only a matter of quality of life, it's much more important than that. So let me talk to you why this should be our top priority. We on the Economic Sustainability Commission have one goal: to lower dependence on the property tax, which generates about 60% of our revenues. 60%. What that means is we have high property taxes. We can do this by increasing business activities, which generate only about 12% of the revenue. What this means is that we are constantly trying to sell our community as a good place to live and invest, but we have a lot of competition, as David pointed out. When you sell a house, the first thing you do is fix it up, right? And when you fix it up, you want it to be attractive. And that's called curb appeal by real estate agents. That's basic economics if you want to sell something. My objective tonight is to convince you that good appearance is not just a nice thing to do. It is imperative if we are going to achieve our goal of decreasing reliance on the property tax. Good appearance and walkability are net positive investments. This slide shows a few of the cost-benefit studies I was able to find. Highlighted in red are just the highlights of the cost benefits. Even though these studies are particular to the urban environment and studied, they consistently show that $1 invested in beautification yields between $2 and $3 of benefits. And these are just the quantifiable benefits. Physical and psychological benefits are hard, but are also huge, but are difficult to quantify. Sell a house before cleaning and fixing it up, then fix it up and resell it. That is the economic value of appearance. People make a living out of doing that, and they're called house flippers. We need to flip Carrboro. Let's go to the next slide, is what, the right arrow? Walkability. Along with appearance, walkability is a net positive investment. These studies identify the benefits, but only scratch the surface. Communities that are considered walkable have higher property values, less dependence on polluting transportation, more health benefits, safer pedestrian accident records, and higher satisfaction from its citizens. How many of you were here in 1985? One. I thought it was only one. You've been here a long time, Randy.
I have.
Well, I'm old enough to vividly remember Carrboro in 1985.
That was you.
Were you here? Okay.
remember, I was trying to.
It's
long
not
time
that
ago, right?
long to remember.
You must have been like a 5-year-old. Except for a few sidewalks in our little downtown area, we had let me capitalize that, no sidewalks on Hillsborough, on Greensboro Street, no sidewalks in the community. I even had people telling me they were walking in the gutter when they walked down those streets. And they were tired of getting their feet wet. So we passed that bond issue. And the bond issue passed in 1985, about 61% to add the sidewalks. That has been the best economic decision that this town has made in 50 years. Didn't know it at the time, but it has been. That investment has paid huge dividends in the quality and the value of this community. We are considered a walkable community. What would have happened if we had not passed that? Where would we be right now without sidewalks? This is huge. Despite that, we have a walkability score of 29. Let's go on. Redfin, I guess it's Redfin. Redfin had put together walk and bike scores for many communities throughout the country. On a scale of 1 to 100, Carrboro has a 29 walk score and a 58 bike score, which is better. But to be fair, many communities in North Carolina have lower scores and a few have higher scores. But I doubt that we would have even gotten a 29 had we not passed that bond issue. Our goal should be a walkable community in fact, as well as in reputation. Our score should be north of 80 on both, walk and bike. North of 80, and many communities cannot achieve that. Some of the communities have achieved that. They're the big urban areas. Despite that, I think we can do that. And we'll be one of the few smaller towns that have actually achieved that. I want to amplify examples that David has brought up. This is on North Greensboro Street. And currently, most of our sidewalks cannot support a person pushing a stroller with a companion walking parallel. When a person approaches, someone must step out into the bike lane for them to pass. This happens time and time again. And it's time for us to step back and say, we've got to fix this. Because what we're doing now is we're now ruining our reputation because we're not maintaining, expanding, and increasing our network of walkways. The quick remedy is to widen sidewalks by eliminating that grass or what I call mud strip and paving that in. That separator strip is really gives us about another foot probably there, and it will help somewhat in widening the current walkways. Edging the sidewalk to prevent vegetation encroachment. I like the idea of retaining walls. We have a few, but I think we could that could be a signature architectural aspect of our community if we had common bricking or common material for those retaining walls all along the paved sidewalks. The other thing that we need to fix are these vision impaired signs. You know, we have these vision impaired slabs on the concrete, but most of them, or a lot of them, are broken. And they actually are dangerous now if you're in a wheelchair because they will cause your chair to shimmy. The long term requires a more thoughtful plan to network the entire community. The southern side, the northern side, everybody should be united by walkways. Maybe 8 to 10 feet. We got to decide on what, but wide, not 3 feet, 4 feet with encroachment. All the encroachment, we're down to about 3 feet now in some places. So the longest connection in our town is roughly 3.5 miles, which means that, in this, we only have 6.5 square miles in our whole town. We're not a big footprint town. And as Sammy said, we could go up, but that's about the only place we can go. So the goal is to have sidewalks that somebody can walk from one town limit to the other town limit with sidewalks, pushing a stroller, with somebody walking beside them. I think we can do that. In 2012, a person named Charles Duhigg wrote a popular book entitled The Power of Habit. I don't know if any of you have read that. It's an interesting book. He pointed out that many successful organizations started with what he called a keystone habit. A keystone habit starts a process that over time transforms everything. We agree with and support all the recommendations of the Appearance Commission, but we also believe that concentrating on building a truly walkable community is a keystone habit that will raise our walk and bike scores, stimulate other improvements in appearance from both the town and its citizens, stimulate more economic activity, and improve the quality of life for everyone in Carrboro. So remember these numbers. 1 to 3 is a cost benefit for investment in appearance and walkability. 29 is our current walk score. 58 is our current bike score. And let me suggest to you that maybe it's time for us to consider another bond issue for a walkable and bikeable community. And from that, I can guarantee you that the benefits we've seen from the last one would be amplified even more. This is an investment. This is not something nice to do. This is an economic imperative that we do something about the way our town is navigated and how it looks. Otherwise, we can forget about transitioning to a more business-oriented revenue. What we'd like to do is be able to start with this and see the good benefits that flow from that as we try to develop our downtown area and other areas in the community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jim. Well, as one of the speakers, as David mentioned during his presentation, the manager is in the process of working with staff on the upcoming budget cycle, and some of these ideas have budget implications. So I just would ask, of course, that the manager take the comments he received today and the presentation into account when he's talking with his department heads about their needs and the resources they need for the next fiscal year. Are there any questions from from council members or comments? Go to Randy, then Susan, and Sammy.
Yeah, thank you, David and Jim, for bringing this forward and sharing it with the community. As long as I've been here, I've been struck by how over time that sense of responsibility and care is just kind of eroded. And, and we would see it looking at the former bank lot at Weaver and North Greensboro. That's what we would focus on, but it really was emblematic of a lot of other areas and just the lack of attention. One of the things, David, on the slide that you showed, maybe it was Hickory, I'm not sure which, but it showed that the small attention to detail, what a difference it makes in that sense of not only comfort, but appreciation for the community in which we live. That's missing. It's deeply missing. I don't know if you've teased out any further in the recommendations that you've made, something more specific that addresses the $30,000 recommendation. But I personally would like to see council get behind a line item that is directed towards downtown revitalization through appearance. Back in the day, and Trish maybe remembers this, I actually started off on a sidewalk and landscaping committee back in the day. And I don't know, over time it just evaporated, but the point is that what makes folks feel comfortable about being downtown is that sense that it's not only attractive, but it's uplifting. And I think that's something we've lost, and that's something that for all the costs that we do incur, it's a small cost to follow through. So I would like to move that we investigate the actual cost of items for a $30,000 investment in our downtown. And thank you again for your work and for the work that it relates to economic development.
Randy's made a motion that we support investigating this idea of a $30,000 investment in downtown appearance. Is there a second of the motion? Seconded by Susan. So we'll continue discussion. Next on the list is Susan.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Randy, for those comments. Thank you, Jim and David, for your presentations. I really appreciate all the information, the pictures that say 1,000 words, and also all of the work that you've been doing to make our downtown safer, cleaner, more pleasing to the eye, and more welcoming. I want to go back, David, to something that you had mentioned about these 4 empty the in-ground planters on East Main Street. And back in December, January, 4 trees did get planted. And I mention that because that was the first step, I think, in terms of improving our downtown streetscape. And I'm very excited about this opportunity for $30,000 budget to take more of those really important steps. I just wanted to follow up on what Randy said in terms of the budget item. So some of the things I heard this evening about the $30,000 would go toward tree canopy, the edging along the sidewalks, more trash receptacles for pets, pet waste, benches, items, having the ability to do more of the cleaning up of litter. I also wanted to mention a few other things that had come up in conversations, and that included things like colorful planters, public art, and both Chapel Hill and Carrboro have very really neat banners that also helped with the town branding. And if there were money in the budget for something like these banners, I hope that would be considered as well. In terms of that $30,000 budget to do some of these very specific things to improve our downtown streetscape, I wondered, David or Jim, if you could talk a little bit about how you came up with that figure. And you may need to be up here, David, so those listening at home can hear you. Thank you.
Last May, we had a number of meetings that were just kind of an impromptu group, of which Mayor Pro Tem Susan Romaine came to as an interested individual to kind of learn more. One of those meetings, we had the Director for Public Works come, and we said, how much would it take to improve this? He said, well, long term, there needs to be a recurring budget item in the budget. But a lot of this, the edging, the litter, the watering of plants, the planting of plants, that can be done in the current budget. It just needs to be a higher priority. So a number of these things we haven't gone through because we didn't feel it was our role at this point. We've identified the 8 things to do. Benches are expensive. You want a 30-year bench. This 30,000 is really just a start, but it's an important start. So I think some of this can be absorbed currently in the budgets that you all have. It's just making it more of a priority. Does that answer?
Yes, it does. Thank you, David. And I just wanted to finish by saying that, $30,000 is a lot of money, and we have so many competing demands for our very limited resources. But also, I think both David, you and Jim made such a good case for this being such an important investment in so many other ways, including economic development and our walkability and our sustainability. And I also wanted to add that I think that the money can be leveraged through volunteers as well. This is just like with invasive species removal. This is an example of gathering volunteers, say once a month to help with the cleanup of litter in our downtown. So many opportunities to plug in volunteers with some of this that would really stretch those leverage those $30,000 to even do more in terms of our streetscape improvements. So thank you again. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Susan. Sammy, you're next.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions. Yeah. Thank you for your presentations. It's nice to see the Appearance Commission. I used to serve on it and as a liaison, and we used to always joke that we were the Disappearance Commission because it was hard to keep quorum. But I'm glad to see y'all's work presented here tonight. I think it's important to recognize kind of the importance of access to the downtown and these components that make it attractive. So you want to be downtown. One of the things I've always been interested is having fruit trees in our downtown. I think we should be considering that as an opportunity. I remember being in a town once and they had orange trees in their downtown, and you could walk down the street and pick oranges. A fruit tree that does well here in our area are plum. Sorry, not plum, but pear. Fig does well, but pear has got a nicer shape. You can work with. There used to be a fruit tree in front of Weaver Street with peaches, and it was well known. And sometimes the concern of Public Works is the peaches fall on the sidewalk and it's a mess to clean up. But there wasn't an issue because it was so well known. People would pick those peaches and eat them before they fell. So the same could happen with the pear trees. So I'm all for that. I'm in agreement that $30,000 isn't much. I'm also interested in a recurring amount of money. We've been talking recently about access to the downtown, and sidewalks and bikeways are certainly part of that. And I think that in the context of a revenue stream that we've been talking about for a downtown improvement district, there may be a revenue stream that we could have annually as we flesh that out, Mr. Manager. I mean, there's definitely sidewalks and bikeways that were included in this presentation. But along with, I can't imagine, having to buy, once you buy benches and once you buy the trash cans, it's not that many more that you'll be buying. We did, for a lot of the recycling bins that we have downtown, that was through a state grant. So there are those opportunities, Mr. Manager, too, that the state provides periodically that we would want to tap into. And not just recycling and trash, but composting. I think on campus they have these amazing trash cans for composting that are odorless, and I think that would fit well with this community. And of course with the dog cans too. So thank you for the presentation. I think we've got a lot to work with here, and looking forward to the next iteration of this.
Thank you, Sammy. I didn't see any other hands, so what I would like to do is just repeat the motion as I understand it, which was from Randy and seconded by Susan, which is to direct the manager to investigate the Appearance Commission's recommended investment of $30,000 in downtown appearance as part of the current budget development cycle. Is that a fair representation of your motion?
It is, yeah.
Susan?
Yes, it is.
Any further discussion or comments? Barbara?
Yeah, and so just for clarity, assume the priority action and at least. Thank you, Pasada. So priority action needed at least $30,000. So are these the items that we're going to start with the?
I guess I would just look to the staff to come back with some more information about that. They have the Appearance Commission's full recommendation that was presented tonight, as long as the printed copies, and maybe this is giving staff a place to start with coming back to us. Does that answer your question, Barbara, or maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I just $30,000 is it going to be enough to cover this? I know they said at least $30,000, so is $30,000 going to cover? I'm assuming that the Appearance Commission would like for us to start with these items and then just kind of move from there.
I heard it as a place to start, for sure. It's
Okay.
a starting point. Yeah.
Started with for trees, now we want to add.
And so we're asking staff for information about these items, and it becomes part of our budget discussion. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just going to add that when staff comes back to us, manager will be able to tell us what kinds of appearance improvements are in the general budget anyway. You know what I'm saying? And we'll be able to get that information and make that assessment.
Mr. Manager, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, also maintenance costs as well. Some of this I'm sure is already in the budget already. So we'll
That's
bring
right.
a comprehensive look at the downtown.
Sammy?
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment that when we receive this feedback from staff about the 30,000 and how far it'll get us, that staff also look into other potential grants from the state and in using this downtown improvement district, a portion of that be thinking of how to include a portion of the revenue generation from that to support the sidewalk component and the bikeways component of this request.
So a friendly amendment is offered to include consideration of other funding and revenue sources for these kinds of programs. Is that acceptable to y'all?
Yeah, I'm guessing.
And just before we move on, and these comments do spur me to think, Barbara and Sammy's thinking longer term. I really appreciate the way that this is framed between the two commissions, both in terms of connectivity and economic sustainability, in addition to appearance. And I think, this 30,000, as we talk about it, is it's not a small chunk to do up front. But I think there are, as Sammy notes, like a lot of other discussions where the economic drivers that are related to this are a big part of this. And I think if maybe after we kind of get through this stopgap period of these priority items and where they do or don't fit in the budget, I think that I just kind of want to keep us having this top of mind as we talk a lot about, their safe routes to schools and other plans that are percolating. I think that money can be very well put to these purposes just in years to come. And I think they're very wise from the commissions to frame it in that way.
There's definitely some overlap there. Yeah. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes unanimously. Thanks to the Appearance Commission members and the members of our Economic Sustainability Commission. Mayor Porto, good to see you again. Thanks for coming out tonight. Right, Mr. Manager, next item, please.
Okay. Next item is a memorandum of understanding creating the Intergovernmental Climate Council of Orange County. The purpose of this agenda item, is to request that the town council consider the attached resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the town of Chapel Hill, town of Hillsborough, and Orange County to create the Intergovernmental Climate Council of Orange County. And Laura Janway is here to provide an overview.
Welcome, Laura.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I have just a few slides tonight for this item. So this item, as the manager mentioned, is an MOU creating the Intergovernmental Climate Council of Orange County. A little bit of background about this group. The council was formed a few years ago at a 2019 Assembly of Governments meeting, and local governments appointed some members. The council met for a few years through the pandemic. They were meeting monthly, and around early spring 2022, the county Board of Commissioners took a step to say we need to kind of get some more formal documents in place and maybe restructure the board. So they suspended the council, and we moved forward. Staff worked to draft an MOU, and the idea was to base the new structure on the organization of the Intergovernmental Parks Working Group, because that group has been meeting successfully for years, and it seemed like a good basis for this new group. So the charge and goals of this group are, there are 5 of them. The first one is to exchange information on climate justice, climate change, climate mitigation, resiliency, and adaptation. So all different topics in the climate action plans of the local jurisdictions. Also maintain and update an inventory of climate change initiatives. This was something that a subcommittee started during the first few years of the Climate Council. We had this big database. It's just a spreadsheet right now, but we got kind of pretty detailed with it, and I think it's a really good resource to really see what are all the local jurisdictions doing and how can we overlap and collaborate, work together. The third one is just to promote communication between the towns and the county. I know there's lots of different staff members on many different, boards and groups that work together, but this one will be solely focused on climate action. And then also staff will be providing informational updates on climate action plans. All of the entities will kind of give updates, let everyone know, hey, we're doing this, what do you all think, or would you all want to be involved? And then the last one is to share opportunities for public education and outreach, because there's a lot of different opportunities where we can reach people on kind of a larger scale, because climate doesn't just end at Carrboro's borders. There's a lot of opportunities to make really larger scale impact. And so the participants, there's 4 parties to the MOU, the county and the towns of Carrboro, Hillsborough, and Chapel Hill. And then there will be several more member entities, and I have them listed here. They're advisory board members, as well as members from the schools, members from all the councils of the 4 parties to the MOU, as well as members from UNC, staff members from OWASA and NC Cooperative Extension, as well as Durham Tech, and the Chamber as well. And so it's definitely going to be a relatively large group, but the membership has been slightly modified from the previous iteration. And next steps are that just a little bit about what staff will be responsible for. In the previous version of the Orange County Climate Council, Orange County staff, they basically prepared all of the agendas and wrote all the minutes and did all of the coordination. And this time, the county staff will still be the lead, but they will also get more support from the staff in Chapel Hill and Carrboro and Hillsborough, because it is, a task that does take some time. So we're going to figure out a way to make sure that we all share in that responsibility. And there will be, there's a plan for 2 meetings of this group per year. And there's a resolution as attachment A that will authorize the mayor to enter into the MOU, and we're asking you to consider that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Laura, so Sammy and...
Thanks, Laura, for your presentation.
I'm sorry, Barbara and Barbara.
I appreciate the work done on this. This is a very important document, as it very clearly states how the towns collaborate. And I think that was one of the things that was missing, and a big problem in how it ended up reflected by the fact that the county unilaterally pulled out. But this document will preempt that from happening again. And I think the jurisdictions will understand their equalness in that board. So it's really valuable. Having said that, as the liaison for the previous iteration of the Climate Council, there was a lot of lessons learned in that process and being in the Climate Council. And I would ask for us to perhaps postpone the approval of signing off on this tonight, because I've just, we just got this on Friday. I sent it out to the membership to see if there was anything that they would like to provide feedback on. I was hoping that we would have had a process that would have incorporated that feedback earlier on, but unfortunately, when the county pulled out, it kind of became a county-led thing. So, but there's a lot of experience that we acquired in that process. For example, already heard from one of the members suggesting that we should perhaps be more intentional in terms of identifying a project that we could collaborate, or projects. And specifically, they were thinking about the federal funds that are available to combat climate change that could be better accessed if we applied for those as interjurisdictionally. I don't necessarily think that this MOU precludes that. So one question I had for our attorney is, as you read this, do you feel that subcommittees would still be able to be established if that was something that was sought?
I need to look at it again. It was a long time ago that I read this MOU.
Oh, okay. So another reason why I think it would be valuable to hold off, just to be able to get that kind of feedback, and feedback from the other members.
Thank you, Sammy. Next, I have Barbara, then Susan, then Randy.
Thank you, Mayor. Miss Janway. Could you go back to the slide? Well, even before that one. Yeah, so the council charge and goals. And so this just looks like exchanging maybe of information, providing updates, ideas. Is there opportunity for action items that you're aware of by this council? And I realize they only meet, according to this, it was like twice a year. And so it just seems like the goal is just to share information and updates. Is that, and not really have any action items?
There's opportunity for that. I think in the third one, it does allude to collaborative efforts in the promote communication. So I think there is opportunity there because we are discussing, items with other staff from other jurisdictions already. There's, ideas we have, and I think this would be a good venue to really set aside time to really discuss them. And yeah, so I think there's opportunity for that.
Okay, and so the next slide is my next question. Sure. And so as I look at this group of folk, my concern goes towards the possibility of a very homogeneous group of folks that may lack diversity, Black, white, Latina, Asian, other. And so that is always a concern of mine. We don't have any of the member entities, say maybe somebody from the NAACP or somebody from El Centro Hispano or the Maddie Hayes' group. What is that? The Community Refugee Partnership. And so, yeah. That's a concern of mine as well. And so you have the Hillsborough Parks and Recreation Board representative. What about our Parks and Rec Board or even Chapel Hills? And, it's just a few questions here. A few questions. Because if you're looking at Hillsborough's Parks and Rec, would we not look at all of the Parks and Rec boards? Carrboro, Chapel Hill. So I don't know how this was.
Thank you,
and I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I have one more comment. So to Sammy's point, and I did kind of scan over your letter, Sammy. Thank you. I guess in reading through the agenda item, it just seemed like the goal here was to start over with a whole new group, right? And potentially not bring anything forward. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, because I know that you want to glean information from some of the former Climate Council members, as well as some of the information and stuff that was discussed in that group. But I'm not sure if that was the county commissioner's goal, as they thought about this new model. And so that was my comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Amy, did you want to respond?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I don't think anything in this MOU precludes inclusion of the work that there's a lot of documents that were developed by the previous Climate Council. I think it would make a lot of sense to build off of that work. My specific request is, in terms of the MOU, having an opportunity for those members to weigh in, as they haven't been part of the process. And so I put that invitation out to previous members, and I have only heard back from 2. For that reason, I just want to wait some time. But as I read the MOU, I don't think that necessarily any of that work will be lost. I think it can be built upon, to your question. Thanks.
Susan, before I come to you, Laura, can I follow up on one of Barbara's questions about Hillsborough Parks and Rec Board? Is that because they don't have an environmental advisory board, basically, or a climate?
That's
sort
my
of their
assumption. Yeah,
equivalent.
I don't know for sure, so I didn't know, but yeah, that's my assumption. That's why other 2 climate boards, are on there.
And Laura, second, in response to kind of the dialogue that Barbara and Sammy were having, is it your understanding as well that there's an opportunity here for that work that you and others were doing as part of that previous iteration to be, carried forward, lifted up as part of the work of the new group?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't think anything precludes that for sure. I think they just wanted to make sure the structure was, laid out in a formal document. And, yeah.
Could I add one more response to Barbara's question about a representation from Centro Latino and NAACP? The previous iteration actually did have representation. I think that there also representation from the Sierra Club and other groups. And I don't know exactly what motivated the commissioners wanting to pare it down. One of the claims was that they were concerned about quorum, but if you actually looked at the times that we met with quorum, it wasn't actually an issue. So, and maybe when we revisit this, I wouldn't be averse to including representation from those organizations. I think that's an important point, especially given the fact that all these representatives are mostly going to be whoever the staff liaison is, and it's very hard to change that representative because they just happen to be that staff liaison, and it's you can't really make it so much more diverse that way. So I think your point's well taken, and it's something that I want us to also include when we send this back to the county.
Susan is next, and then Randy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Laura, for your presentation this evening. I have just a few comments. I'm going to, since we're on that topic in terms of the member entities, yeah, you're right, Sammy. I know that the two local chapters of the NAACP were previously represented, Sierra Club previously represented. The other group that I find is missing is young people. And I believe in the previous, with the previous Climate Council, as I recall, there were actually 5 representatives of younger groups, in the case of the public schools, I think there could be maybe a representative from the school board, but also there was a student represented. So I would love to see more representation from young people as well. One other quick thing before I get to the bigger thing is right now this group is scheduled to meet 2 times per year. And I'm going to make a recommendation that it meets more frequently than that. I feel like it's the ways that this could be a bigger charge, and with a bigger charge in order to really have an impact. Twice a year just seems like you're hardly you're going to have some conversations and information exchange, but I'm just not sure how much real action would happen meeting so irregularly. So to Sammy's point, I do want to lift up this idea as a charge for this group would be to identify just one project that they would really like to prioritize for climate mitigation for Orange County. And then when there are instructions available for Inflation Reduction Act, look at how that one project could be funded with some of that federal money. So I would like to lift up that idea. It seems like this is such a unique time to have this possible funding available, and it would be really nice if the townships and the county work together to prioritize that one project. There were a couple other things I wanted to include with the charge, and one would be that as important it is to have more public partnerships within the county, I also think it's going to be very important that the county partners with other nearby counties. I know this is not going to all happen right away, but it would be great if part of this Climate Council was also planting the seed for developing these partnerships with other counties in terms of making this an even bigger collaborative effort around climate action. And finally, I just wanted to include as a charge that this group look for ways that they can jointly advocate for climate change initiatives at the state and federal level. Not in any scheduled way, but there will be different things that come up, and it seems like if they weigh in together, making joint statements, it would be much more impactful than if each town was weighing in individually. So I wanted to lift up those charges, but knowing that by taking on these additional responsibilities, my sense is that this group would need to meet as often as once a quarter, maybe even monthly, in order to really have an impact. So thank you for considering.
Thanks, Susan. I'll put you on the list. But next I have Randy, and Eleazar has his hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I just want to clarify that it's my understanding in reading this MOU and looking at the action taken by the county commissioners that the reason that they have laid out this framework is to model it after the Intergovernmental Parks Work Group, so that the entities that are involved are governmental entities. I was I guess a substitute liaison to the initial Climate Council, and one of the questions that kept being asked over the 2 years that we had met, and it was a very dynamic committee, the council. They did a great job in terms of their discussion of climate issues and the work on the inventory. That said, one of their key issues was their role, and what is our role, and how do we get the work done? And that's because it was a combination of stakeholder groups in addition to governmental employees. In other words, each of the entities had staff that were part of that group, but the staff could not take direction from the stakeholders. That's the problem with setting it up with stakeholders and not with folks who represent, that are formal representatives. And so I want to make that very clear that the commissioners laid it out this way to frame it so that the staff that's involved, that's directly involved, are able to bring back to their councils and get clear direction on what is shared, because it doesn't mesh well when you have stakeholders that are not representative. So, and I think having the NAACP is really important, and I think having the El Centro and other groups is really important. But Laura, the key, the problem that happened last time, to avoid adding that to the charge, is to create opportunities for maybe have seats, but not necessarily be, I don't know, voting seats. I don't know how that's going to work, but the point is you need that representation, but the problem is that can't drive. It has no way to work if it's driving the work. I mean, you were there, so you know. So the key point is that when each of the staff people come back to us, we give them direction, and that's our input. But it doesn't work quite cleanly enough in terms of that, because our staff can't take direction from people who are stakeholders. And I think we have to be very careful we don't make a recommendation to that in the charge, for part of the charge to be exactly what the commissioners are trying to correct. So I'm just putting that out there because the commissioners looked at this very carefully, and they chose a model that already exists in the Intergovernmental Parks Work Group. And there's a reason why it has the format it does, even with the limitations that we see. There's a way to get around that. Lastly, in terms of the meeting times, I do think meeting more consistently, monthly or quarterly, I think they need to look at that. I agree. I think that's an excellent point. And identifying projects, they may not be ready within the next 6 months to identify projects, but we should be asking what projects each of these entities are working on, that they could come together and have a bulleted list of what projects mesh, because I think that's a way to expedite it. So thank you.
Eleazar and Barbara, and then I saw Sammy's hand again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council Member Haven O'Donnell, for bringing that up, because I was wondering as we were having this conversation, right, if we're gonna and bringing that up, my idea comes if this is supposed to be so that it's not opening the door for staff to get direction from folks who don't have the ability to give them direction, then we need to look at the current list already, because I see non-governmental entities in there already. Either we have inclusion of all these organizations and find a way to get that done, or we don't have any non-governmental organizations and shut that window or that door altogether. So thank you for bringing that up, and kind of makes me think of this a little bit differently, because I was also in the mindset of, if you're meeting twice a year, you're just sharing information, what work is going to get done, right? So that was my way of thinking it, and I haven't been in a part of these conversations in the past. I haven't been part of the council in the past. I imagine there would still be projects that got done outside of that charge, but the charge would be to come in, talk about it, share information, then go home. So kind of adding something along those lines of real responsibilities around this, whether it's recommendations or projects or something more than just information sharing, I think makes it a lot more action oriented for me. So I heard Council Member Slade wanting to table this. So if appropriate, I would move to table this until we can hear back from staff on how we can make all these different conversations work into this MOU, to include an adjustment of either the membership and ways for that to work, to include more consistent. I'm in line with quarterly. Staff can let us know whether that works or not, and adjusting the deliverables of this group, this council, so that it's a lot more clear that we're moving forward with action. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes.
So as I understand the motion, it's to continue discussion of the draft MOU and to include consideration of representatives from community groups, as we've discussed, frequency of meetings, and clarity around deliverables. Is that your seconding that?
Yeah, I second that.
Next on the list is Barbara, and then Sammy.
Thank you, Mayor. And mine is going to be really quick. I understand about process and the need to set things up a certain way, especially as it relates to an MOU. But what I also understand is, we have to have key voices at the table. We have to have diverse voices. And so we cannot use these different titles and things to exclude anyone. There should be space at the table in some way, so the input can be provided by groups like the NAACP, El Centro Hispano, and so forth. And so I did just want to say that, and I don't know how they would the county commissioners may set that up, but that is certainly not lost on me, and we have to continue to, advocate and make room, because it was like that before. And the second thing is, when we're talking, Mayor Pro Tem Romaine mentioned about our youth, and so then, groups like this, I don't know, I guess they would meet potentially during the day. So when you think about students, they may be in school. So, that's a consideration, not that to exclude them because of that. But I'm saying, if we're going to have, groups like, NAACP, students, the refugee community, you may have to move away from what was like a meeting between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., in order to make room for folks. Mm-hmm. The Chapel Hill Town Council authorized the Chapel Hill mayor to enter into the MOU on February 22nd, and it looks like March 13th of this year. Is that correct?
Like there was a typo in there.
There's a typo, but at any rate, the Chapel Hill Town Council has already authorized their mayor to enter into the MOU. as it is right now. Is that correct?
I assume one other board that's the typo. Who did, one
So
of
you
them
think
did
it's
something
two?
on the February 22nd, and another one took action on March 13th. But
So you think
who were
it's
the
two?
two boards that have already approved entering into the MOU?
My apologies. Chapel Hill Town Council and the Hillsborough.
Oh, so they have
Yes.
as is,
Yes,
as
and the
presented.
county is waiting to hear back from all of the municipalities before they move forward.
And so Chapel Hill and Hillsborough have entered into this MOU as presented to us tonight.
Authorized their mayors.
Authorize
to,
their mayor to do that. Okay, all right. Just for clarity.
that's important.
Sorry about the
point.
typo.
Okay, next is Sammy, and then Danny.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is Randy's correct. There was confusion in terms of, for example, there were some advocacy things that the previous council wanted to do. And it wasn't clear because staff were voting were considered members. And I think that this MOU addresses that concern and that it very clearly separates staff from membership. Presumably, it doesn't say who's voting, but I assume that's implied there, Mr. Attorney, right? It's membership. The membership of the council would be the voting. So I don't find the issue of not, there's no issue from how I'm reading this for included NAACP or Centro or any other organization, because they would be included under membership. Staff is got its role and it's not a voting role. In terms of, we keep saying that we're addressing the county, but this is a memorandum of understanding. This is jointly owned. This is us as much as the county and Chapel Hill and Hillsborough. This is why I wish we would have had more of a collaboration behind the scenes before bringing it to the various boards, but here we are. So yeah, I'm supportive of Eleazar's motion. I think that some of these things can be reflected in here, and I don't think it has to be too complicated. In terms of, for example, this question of how often it meets, I would be more in favor of setting a minimum. It could be minimum 2 meetings or minimum quarterly, but I think there's a lot to be said about the group itself that is doing the work, knowing for itself how much it has to meet instead of people outside of it predetermining that for them.
Danny?
So I haven't heard one single thing that I disagree with in substance or that I don't think is a good idea for the direction of this board. I think our comments are really thoughtful and important, mind toward racial diversity, a clarification of staff versus membership, review potentially from prior members. All of that strikes me as eminently reasonable. I want to raise the concern that since Chapel Hill and Hillsborough have entered into this, there's the potential for having them needing to reapprove changes that are made. And I wonder to what extent, I'm a little bit loath to rush this through to Sammy's point about the prior council. That I do take that really seriously, and it would be a shame, I think, to not have that feedback. But I guess I'm wondering if there is a way to authorize our mayor to move forward in a way that our comments can be reflected as the council is coming together. And I mean, just in the spirit of, I think, what this is and what it's doing, the work that staff has put in to do this. And this may not really, Laura, please feel free to check me here. If this is easy enough to revise and recirculate, and it's not sort of opening the issue again to have these comments. I just worry a little bit about the volume of this feedback, how actionable it is for our other partners. And I wonder whether it can't be incorporated. I mean, this is a pretty good faith agreement. I think most of the points we've raised here tonight are really valid. And I wonder if they could be addressed, sort of under the MOU as it more or less is. And this is not a flag I'm planting or anything like that, but something I kind of want us to consider if we can't just move this forward tonight for our partners and for the goals of this.
Thanks. I appreciate where you're wanting to go with that, Danny. I do worry a little bit about the idea that somehow the council will still need to see a final MOU to authorize me to execute, right? And I'm just not sure there's any way of getting around that. One thing, and I appreciate all the comments from council members, really helpful to have this close reading of the draft agreement. One thing that is coming to mind as I hear your suggestions about modifications that could be made is that the motion that we have before us from Eleazar and seconded by Sammy is to make modifications related to representation, modifications related to the frequency of the meetings, and modifications related to, Eleazar said, clarity around the deliverables of the council or the task force. But what I haven't heard is any critique or apparent concern about the articulated charge and goals of the council, which to me are pretty clearly laid out. Exchange information, maintain and update an inventory of activities, promote communication between the entities, provide updates to each of the represented bodies, and finally, share education and outreach opportunities. I feel like there's an undercurrent here from some of the comments that somehow you are imagining there to be more going on here. And it's not really represented in what the charge is in this MOU. And so, am I misreading that? Sammy, can you?
Yeah, I don't think we're saying that. I don't know what you mean by more going on here, but
what I mean is, like, are you expecting there to be something else that this body is doing other than what's clearly laid out here?
no, we just want to make sure we're clear about what we would hope they could do.
Some comments about, like, this council, the climate council would, like, have a joint project. I think Susan had an idea of, like, identifying a joint project. Well, that's not really contemplated in this draft, for example. I'm just use as an example.
But yeah, I agree. Like, it's written so that could potentially be done, and I just want to make sure that is understood as how it's written from our attorney. Like, you feel like that could be like?
Yeah, I see that, and you've all made the comment before. It doesn't preclude
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
The more serious comment that you're making is, how about the composition of the council?
Right. That needs to be spelled out.
I just wanted to make sure I understood where y'all were coming from on that.
But yeah, I think there's some edits that I would be interested in getting a worked on version for us to look at to then forward to the other entities that have already signed off on this. And it would include a change of the add in NAACP El Centro and Maddie's, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name. RCP, and then setting a minimum of times that they would meet. And, and I'd be open for, if we could, if we still want to include something about a specificity about, like, joint project, that maybe it's not for staff, but we craft something for the council to consider at the time when we look at this.
Let me, thanks for that, Sammy. So there is a motion to, I'll interpret the motion to be to direct staff to go back to the other partners for further discussion about representation by community organizations on the Climate Council, including the groups that you've heard listed here.
Can you specify what the three that we've said?
Well, there were more than three mentioned. I can just throw these out. The two local branches of the NAACP, El Centro Hispanos, Sierra Club, Young People. Those are the examples that were shared. The other point of discussion is the frequency of the meetings. And the other point of discussion is, again, I don't really know what Eleazar meant by this, but clarity around deliverables.
Yes, and I actually, and I'm willing to amend it. My thought was around this. I know that several, at least I want to see, or I would like to see this group to do a project, to do something more than information sharing. I understand that that's what the goal, it's outlined here. I wanted part of my motion was to have staff let us know if that's even a thing, right? I want to explore this council doing more than just information sharing.
Gotcha.
Now, if council wants me to remove that from the motion, willing to do that. It's not a sticking point.
In the spirit that it's not precluded.
Yeah.
By the existing draft.
I have
let me just make sure that the amendment is okay with Sammy.
Yeah, I think that would, I do think, and just as long as our attorney agrees, I think that can be included. It's under, as is read. The only issue I have is in terms of process, I would be more comfortable instead of going to the other jurisdictions, then coming back to us, and then us saying, oh, it's not quite reflecting. We could get that draft first that we could thereafter share with the jurisdictions so that we're very clear about what our communication and submission is to them. Just as the county submitted this to us, I don't see why we can't do it ourselves.
Mr. Manager, thanks, Sammy. Mr. Manager, it seems to me like assuming this motion is adopted, to go back and present these ideas for possible amendments to the MOU, there's going to have to be discussion at the staff level or the attorneys or whatever to figure out how this might be amended to be acceptable to all the parties, including Carrboro. I'm not going to do that. Right. So, the staff and the attorneys have come together to prepare this draft. You're now hearing feedback from this council about things they'd like to see changed. There's going to have to be communication among the jurisdictions about those potential changes. And if Hillsborough and Chapel Hill are okay with it, the county is waiting for the rest of us to figure, they're waiting for the 3 towns to figure out what we want to do. So, Sammy, I guess I'm just in response to you saying our direction is to staff to incorporate these potential amendments and have a conversation with the other 2 towns about whether those are acceptable to them.
Right, but in the interest of not having this be like a chicken without a head, I would want to have us provide feedback on whatever that conversation ends up being, because we're the ones making this request, as opposed to having it go to Chapel Hill again, them reconsidering, them reapproving, then Hillsborough reapproving, and then us saying, oh, it's not exactly what we requested. We would like to do this, And, this, again, would have not been an issue if we had had a subcommittee to hash it out and had those conversations. Instead, we're doing it here.
Manager, I have Barbara and Randy, but Mr. Manager, I want to ask for some guidance here.
Yes, if you allow Laura, the attorney, and myself to have a conversation, we'll figure out how to communicate this back to those jurisdictions and report back to council what we learned about what the next step might be.
And may I add something to that?
Please.
Subject to his views. Sammy, for example, you made a good point. Why don't you change the language to at least X amount of me? You've got Eleazar here a little bit concerned about deliverables.
Well, we're removing that from the motion, so that's no longer a concern.
Well, here's where I'm going with it. One thing that can help us is if any of you have some desired changes, that you do, and you know what I mean? In wording, right? I think that would be useful too.
So those can be shared by council members with Nick, with the manager. So we don't miss it. We don't miss what you're talking. Mm-hmm. So I had a hand from Barbara, and then after that is Randy.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And so I remember Ms. Janway, I had asked the question about action in the beginning. And Ms. Janway pointed me to promote communication. So promote communication between the towns and county on future opportunities and collaborative efforts, which may include action. It's not exactly saying that, but right, Ms. Janway?
Yeah, there's a sentence in that I didn't include on here in the first part of section 1 that says, the charge goals of the council are to coordinate on climate-related issues and opportunities. So I think coordinate could be interpreted in
I understand.
a broad way.
So some clarity there. And then back to something council members, Sammy, said. So it is an MOU, but the Board of County Commissioners, they created this Climate Council Review Subcommittee, and that was pretty much under their...
That was 3 commissioners.
Okay, and it was all commissioners is what yeah. And so nobody else was a part of that conversation. Okay, that was all. Thank you, Mayor.
Randy. And I'd like to get us toward a decision on this motion that's before us.
My reading of this initially, and I'm putting this out there because I don't think any of the comments that we've been made are precluded by what was given to us, except the question of composition of the board, and so of the Climate Council. So I have to ask myself, why would Hillsborough and why would Chapel Hill approve it, and how could they not have had the same question we did? So I'd almost like... No, I really would like to know, Mr. Manager, if we could, because I'm guessing, just like with the Intergovernmental Parks Work Group, when things needed to change, and I was on that committee one time, when things needed to change, we asked for certain things to change. Are we not? I'm just wondering if we're going too far into the weeds, and why Hillsborough or Chapel Hill did not raise these same questions. And I say this because it's not because we're Carrboro. I know the folks who are on the other two councils, so I just wonder, what is the answer to that question, and why are we're reading this very in very tightly, as opposed to seeing the larger framework that the Board of Commissioners have set up. So I'm just raising that question.
Does staff have do you know anything about the discussions that were had by the town council in Chapel Hill or Hillsborough?
No, I'm sorry, I don't. Yeah.
So, I really would like us to take action on this motion.
I know you would, but there was one other very important point that I made at the very beginning of this, which had to do with an opportunity to receive feedback, enough time for us to receive feedback if there is potentially any feedback from membership. So to that point, I don't know to what degree it would be required of us to affirm that input or not. But if you all feel confident that previous members might provide feedback that I could refer for staff and the manager to work with others on, then that would be one way to go about it. Or we could have matters by the board at the end of next meeting, and I could bring that to you all very quickly and just refer it or not, according to whether to your pleasure.
So Nick has recommended that, in addition to whatever motion we adopt tonight, that if individual council members have additional feedback to share with the manager about the draft
language,
agreement, maybe that's an opportunity for you to include that in what you share with the manager.
Yeah, my only concern is the language that what we've been talking about so far is very straightforward language about specific organizations and a minimum of number of meetings. And I was thinking if there's something more substantial that's recommended, I feel that would make sense for this body to affirm or not have an opportunity to do so. And that's why I was recommending that perhaps at the end of our next meeting, matters by the board, if there is an issue such as that.
Maybe you can let us know if you get
sure.
That.
Okay.
Helpful. Yeah. Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you.
Okay. The motion, as I understand it, by Eleazar and seconded by Sammy, is for direct staff to have a discussion with their counterparts in primarily Chapel Hill and Carrboro, but also the county, about the draft MOU, and to recommend some changes related to representation from community groups that we've listed and frequency of the meetings. That is the motion.
I thought in the motion it also included that the one project would be identified by this group to be working on.
So my understanding is that Eleazar and Sammy agreed to remove that deliverable comment from the motion.
Yeah, and the reason why, Susan, is I feel that under, it says maintain, promote communication between the towns and the county on future opportunities and collaborative efforts. I think that could be included in there.
I'm good with that.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Matter passes unanimously. Mr. Manager, you have some new marching orders, I guess. Thank you. And Sammy, and council members, including Sammy, if you have other comments you want to share with the manager, please do. And Sammy, you'll let us know if you get any more substantive feedback from previous members of the council.
Yeah, which means hopefully you won't have that meeting before our next meeting, which I doubt, because I know how hard it is to set up meetings. Thanks.
Laura, thank you so much. Appreciate the work that's gone into this. Mr. Manager, I believe the next item is appointments to the planning board. So, Clerk, do you have thoughts to share or ballots to share?
Do you have some ballots?
Great.
Yes. I'll take any questions before. There are
My understanding is we have one seat for the transition areas to appoint, and there's one applicant who's would be a reappointment. One seat is for the ETJ. We have 2 applicants for that seat. We have basically 4 in-town seats, but one of those is held currently by a member who's eligible for reappointment. So really there are 3 vacant seats that we're making in-town appointments to. So that's what we're doing here tonight. So let's get those ballots rolling.
Just a quick question. In our guidelines, it says that it's really up to our discretion, but it does make the point of not having representative on 2 boards. And our representative, there's an applicant for the ETJ who currently serves on the Truth Plaque Committee. So one question is, from your question to her, it sounded like she would be more interested in serving on the planning board than on the Truth Plaque. But the question for us is, would we require her to serve on one or the other?
To make a decision about that when we come to
And
it.
I wonder if should we vote or because it might inform who
Should
we
see
vote for first.
whether we appoint that person.
Okay.
And then
One
we have
other.
Randy, question?
Yeah, to the clerk, and didn't we just appoint David Salveson to the TAB?
Yes.
I would assume he's not on your list of eligible applicants then. I mean, he is eligible, but we've already appointed him recently.
He was included on here because he attended a meeting before the other appointments took place, so.
Gotcha.
But we need to know that he's already on a board.
Correct. Yeah, TAB,
All right.
yes.
I won't just
Thanks
want to be
for reminding us of that, Randy. Okay, council member is going to fill out ballots. Remember that there is an expectation to use all your votes.
Thank you.
We have 1 transition area seat, 1 ETJ seat, and 3 in-town seats, under the assumption that we are agreeing to reappoint Elmira.
Transition area seat is not on this ballot because he was
The only applicant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wesley.
Thanks, Wesley.
So, council members, while Wesley is counting ballots, can I ask for a motion to reappoint Elmira Mangum to the planning board for reappointment?
Moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Randy, seconded by Eleazar to reappoint Elmira Mangum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. I would entertain a motion to recommend to the county commissioners that they reappoint Susan Fulton to the transition area seat.
So moved.
Moved by Eleazar, seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter passes unanimously. I think the others had to be tallied. Is that right? Did I cover all the? Okay. We do have 2 more items after this one. It should be, well, one of them should be very quick. Yeah. Omar, Adam, I'm realizing y'all have been sitting there all night waiting for this, but I appreciate your time. Should be quick.
You've been here before.
I don't know.
Dark like me.
I mean, well, I guess we can't talk about it right now, but
Until we get to it, yeah.
Sour Patch jelly beans.
I have 2 people that didn't sign their names. I need to know which.
oh, well, mine's got the squiggle on the second to last. Yep, that's fine.
You got a symbol.
I didn't put my name.
Signature. No, I'm just kidding.
For real.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Got some majority votes for people?
First, I'll do the ETJ seat. I have 4 votes for David Clinton, 3 votes for Terry Buckner.
So there's a majority of votes for David Clinton. Entertain a motion to recommend to the county commissioners that they reappoint David Clinton to the planning board. Moved by Barbara, seconded by Eleazar. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The matter passes unanimously.
And for the vacant in-town seats, I have, I'll just read out the top 3.
Yeah.
April Barber, Galen Kirkpatrick, and David Perriton.
Thank you. And they all had a majority in that, at least 4 votes for each of those?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, April Barber, 7, Galen Kirkpatrick, 7, David Perriton, 5.
I'll entertain a motion to appoint April Barber, David Perriton, and Galen Kirkpatrick. By Sammy.
Okay.
Ended by, I'm going to give that one to Susan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Wesley, thank you once again for continuing the gargantuan task of managing advisory board appointments. He's got a handle on it now. We have 2 remaining items that were moved earlier tonight from the consent agenda. I'd like to suggest, Mr. Manager, that we start with the item that Adam and Omar have been patiently waiting to get through, and that is the request to set a public hearing. I think really it's just a matter of Councilmember Romaine wanted to add Stormwater Advisory Commission to the list of advisory boards that we refer it to. Is that correct, Susan?
That's correct. There were quite a few neighbors who had expressed concerns about stormwater, and I thought it would be good if it was reviewed by Stormwater Advisory Commission. Add that to the list.
Okay. Would you make a motion to approve the resolution with that addition?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by
Sammy.
Sammy, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that this is such a minor modification. I feel really embarrassed to have people wait for a whole meeting for something that we could have done during the consent agenda item. So I just want us to be conscious of that and extend my apologies.
Thank you. Thanks, Sammy, for saying that. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Matter passes unanimously. The final item is the school's adequate public facilities ordinance. Mr. Manager?
Ooh. I don't either.
The purpose of this agenda item is to request that the town council review and adopt the 2023 annual report on the SAFO. The Orange County Board of Commissioners has referred the 2023 draft report for review. The resolution for the council's use has been prepared.
Susan, you had a question about this.
Yeah, I pulled this item because I know that we had looked at this SAFO report last year, and we had been able to share some comments. And so I wanted to pull it. I had just a couple comments, and others may want to comment as well. I'll be very, very brief. I don't know if you also had a presentation, Tricia, or you're just waiting for some comments. Okay.
Oh, I just haven't taken it off today.
3 things, and I'll be quick. First of all, I know that there has been an increased, kind of like a shift in terms of more and more parents I talk to are interested in their kids taking career technical courses. More and more kids are interested in taking those courses, and that, of course, has different implications in terms of classrooms. In terms of the spacing needs, as maybe we are shifting more toward those kinds of courses. So I wanted to add that as a comment, just that there is that awareness in terms of the change in the spacing needs. Should we be continuing to shift toward more of these career and technical education classes?
Yeah, I mean, the MOU and the ordinance don't speak to that. The determination of capacity is made by the school districts, and so it's not defined. they decide, they provide the square footage for how they're determining capacity. And so if they make decisions, aside from the pre-K one, which is specifically spelled out in the MOU, the K through 12, the non-K through 12 classrooms and the temporary school classrooms, there isn't it doesn't specify what types of classrooms are being counted, as long as they meet the requirements of the state, public education requirements. So it doesn't speak to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, if the school district makes a determination that their capacity is they're offering more CTE classes or, other programs under another, kind of approach, then that would be their determination of capacity. And I mean, we are working actively to kind of prepare possibly an alternative interlocal agreement later this year about schools. So it will be a slightly, a different structure that removes the caps and things like that. So.
Let me follow up on what you said about the pre-K as well, because I know this had been an issue raised last year that the pre-K students, I guess, are not included as members in this report. And we're living at a time where it's just very, very hard for many families to find affordable quality daycare. I'm curious about when there is clearly excess capacity in our schools, and I think the number of elementary school students was dropped 81 this year compared to last year. To what extent is this excess capacity, to what extent can it be used for pre-K programs?
Nothing prevents it from being used for pre-K programs. Those spaces just can't be used to do the calculation of capacity for the K through 12. So there's no, from the perspective of the memorandum of understanding and the adequate public facilities ordinance provisions, there isn't any relationship or preclusion of those programs being offered by the schools.
It was a little vague in the abstract. This question was raised last year, can it be included? And it was a little vague in the abstract. Has there been any more discussion about including the pre-K in capacity?
Well, going forward, the expectation is that there'll be fewer kind of defining limitations as there are now, but the current structure we have does focus on K through 12, which is not pre-K. And this is a capital improvements planning tool, essentially, primarily to help the county commissioners understand what needs are for schooling in the county. And then, of course, it also, by time, the thinking was, 20 years ago, tying it together with the local governments and the issue and the approval of developments, that relationship between new demand would be very clear. And the thinking now is really to create a system that has more flexibility in it and less kind of specific definitions that have been somewhat limiting in this regard. And the decision about the offering of pre-K and the K through 12 is a funding decision, ultimately is a capital, and the way the school capacity would be provided would be in that joint process of communication between the school districts and the county commissioners. So I think it's not precluded to be on the table at all, be discussed, be identified as a priority. Just right now, this particular tool just doesn't allow it to be part of a capacity evaluation.
Thank you. That's helpful. One final comment. In last year's comments, it said school system awareness of Carrboro's climate action plans and how they impact transportation choices. And I was hoping to add for a comment this year, school system awareness of town of Carrboro's engagement around Bowling Creek Greenway phases 3 and 4 and how those decisions may impact transportation choices, especially for those families that are districted for Sewell Elementary, Smith Middle, and Chapel Hill High School.
We will be communicating with them, I think, because that's part of the previous conversation about how to approach community engagement in this question of the Greenway. So.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Your question, Susan. I guess I didn't hear necessarily anything to be added to the resolution in the agenda packet. So if that's correct, I would entertain a motion to the resolution, which is to basically receive this report.
Second.
And moved by Barbara and seconded by Susan to approve the resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Matter passes unanimously. Trish, thanks for being here to answer questions.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
That brings us to the end of the agenda. Mr. Manager, is anything else from you?
No, nothing for me.
Anything else by council members?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Sammy to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Danny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Okay, Damon, we need to send